Hello and welcome to part 2 of the UserForm course. Here I'm going to show you how to add additional types of controls to a user form, get their values, and then store them in the worksheet on the next available line. And we're going to use an animal selection template for this, where you can choose a cool cat that is a male, and let's say you offer a free toy with every pet purchase, and they can choose a color. So they choose blue, and they must check I agree that I love animals. And if they don't check that and try to submit, they get an error message: attitude and your love of animals is required, and nothing is going to be stored in the worksheet. So they must check this in order to continue. And another little input validation feature is if they type something up here which is not in the list, let's say for some reason they type a color and they try to input that, it won't let the value be input unless it is already in the list for the combo box. So another input validation feature. When they make the correct selection, so a selection from the drop-down, and check I agree that I love animals, then they can submit and have everything stored in the worksheet. Now this is from my full VBA course. I'm going to put a link to it in the description of this video, and this full form is in that course as well as the downloadable file. Here we're going to be making a pared down version of that. So you're still going to learn how to add the controls and get their values and save them, but the validation features and some of the other cool little things are only going to be found in the full VBA course. Now I'm going to close this workbook and we're going to start fresh, but don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon and give it a thumbs up. Alright, we are now in an almost completely empty file. The only thing that we have here is what we see in the worksheet, so our kind of template where we're going to input the data. And you may be wondering what this colors section is right here. Well, I'm going to show you two different ways to get values into a combo box, so the little drop-down menu, and the list box where we selected a toy color. And this is one of the ways I'm going to show you, which is to use a series of values from a worksheet. So the first thing that we want to do is to grab these guys and name this range. I'm going to go ahead and name it colors. Simple and easy to remember. Now you do not have to have this on the same worksheet where you're going to store the data. I have it like this because it's easier to give the tutorial this way and for you to see how everything works together. So let's go and build this user form. Hit Alt F11 to go to the VBA window and go to Insert, User Form. And remember that one of the first things that you want to do is to rename the user form. If you don't see the Properties window over here, go to View and Properties window, or F4. And if you don't see the Toolbox over here, you can click Toolbox right here or Toolbox right here. Now let's rename the form. We're going to give it a prefix FRM so it's easier to find later. And let's call this Animal Selection. And I'm going to make this window a little bit bigger. There we go. And let's give it a caption so it's not just user form 1. Animal Selection. And we can see the caption right there, Animal Selection. And we will make this guy a little bit bigger and add some elements. Let's go with the combo box first. That is right here, combo box. Click that guy and click right here. And let's add a list box as well. This guy right here. And before we do anything else, rename these guys. Do not forget to do that. For the combo box, we're going to call it CBO Attitude. And for the list box, this is going to be LST Toy Color. And if we run this form now, we are going to have, well, nothing. So the first thing that we need to do is to add some values to these guys. Let's go with the list box first and get these colors over here into the list box. And since we named the range, it's going to be so easy. Click the list box, go to the Properties window, and go down to Row Source. And you can give this a range reference, qualify it with the sheet. So if you wanted to input sheet 1, you'd go sheet 1 exclamation point, let's say A2 to A5, I think it is. Hit enter, and you are going to see the colors right there. But as you can see, I have missed some of the colors, so it's not exactly the best thing to input a hard-coded range reference. Let's use the named range that we made instead. So I'm going to delete that and just type colors, hit enter, and there we go. We can click the form and run it, and we now have a list, and we can select items. So with a little bit of work, we are already on the way to getting this guy to work. And the next thing that we want to do is to put some values in the combo box. Now there are many ways to put values in both of these guys, and we could use row source for this as well. We have an option for that right here. But I'm going to show you another way to put a value in this guy. So let's double click the form. And this is now the UserForm click event. So what's going to happen when we click the UserForm, but that's not what we want. We want to have UserForm in the left drop-down menu up here, and then in the right menu, click Initialize. And this is going to run when the UserForm starts up. So when it is loaded. And what you can do here is to input the values into the user form or prepare it for however you want to prepare it. You can do a lot of things here, and it's very helpful when you get a bit more advanced. What we're going to do here is to put values into the combo box. How do we do that? Well, first we have to tell it what we want to work with, which is the combo box. So we type CBO, control space, and it's going to try to fill it in. It can't figure out what we want, but we can see CBO attitude right here at the top. Double click that. Then period, then add item, the first option right there. And a space and the first value that you want to add. Let's add boring. Maybe you could replace boring with calm if you want a calm cat or a calm dog. But that's how you add an item. And to add another item, just call it again and input another value. It's really simple and really easy to do. And you can put this guy within a loop as well if you wanted to add a lot of different items really quickly and easily. And we can even click play from here and run the user form, and we are now going to see boring and cool. And we are done with those two guys. And at this point in the full course, I would show you how to make it so that you cannot input anything into the combo box that is not in the drop-down list. But I'm going to save that for the full course, and we are going to move on to option buttons here. So let us allow the user to select a cat or a dog and a male and female. Now there are two different ways that you can have option buttons, because what you want is you want them to be mutually exclusive, right? Select a cat or a dog, but then also select male or female. Now the easy way to allow for this is to add a frame. Actually, the other way isn't difficult, but this is one way that people find a little bit easier sometimes. So we go down to frame in the toolbox, click that guy, and let's put it right here. Click that. And it is a little bit of a big guy, so let's click the form, make it big, and we'll shrink it down in just a moment. Then go back to the toolbox and click Option Button. And how about another Option Button? And then we can shrink the frame around this guy. And now, since we put this inside of a frame, these option buttons are in their own group. We don't have to do anything else. They are mutually exclusive. We can put additional option buttons out here or in another frame, and it's not going to mix with these. And before we add the other option buttons, let's rename the frame and these guys. So what we need to do here is to click the drop-down menu and go to frame 1. That's the default name. And we are going to rename this to FRA for frame and sex so that they can choose male or female. Then we change the caption to sex and option button 1. We are going to rename that OPT. And that will be male. Remember, we're going to reference the name in the code, and the caption, male. And then this one will be OPT, female, and female. Now we are going to put two more option buttons out here, 1 and 2. And this one's going to be option for the cat, so OPT cat with a caption of cat and this one will be dog. So OPT, dog, and caption dog. Now let us run this. And we can choose cat or dog and male or female. But we're not done yet, because what if we don't want a frame around these guys? We don't want any frames at all. Let's go to the option buttons that we want grouped, look to the properties window, and then go to group name. And we're going to give it a prefix GRP and call it animal. And go to the next option button that you want in that group and give it the same name, GRP animal. Now the behavior is still going to be what it was just a moment ago. It's just that we now have grouped them using the group name property. So we don't need to have these guys in a frame. But even more interesting, in the full VBA course, I show you how to loop through specific groups of controls within the user form in order to have a more dynamic way to get their value from the form and put it into the worksheet. That is a little bit of a complex topic, and I'm not going to cover it here, but it is so very powerful the moment that you want to make anything other than a very basic form like this. So here I'm still going to show you how to get the values from the option buttons and put them in the worksheet, but I do show you a more advanced, better way to do it in the full VBA course. And once again, a link to that in the description of this video. But now let's go ahead and round this guy out and get the other controls in it. Make this a little bit smaller. I'm not going to arrange all the controls in this tutorial because it takes a very long time to make them look nice. Let's go ahead and add the command buttons, one for cancel and one for saving the input. And how about a checkbox right here? Rename the checkbox to CHK for the prefix agree. And for the caption, I agree that I love animals, and a little smiley face. And we could auto size it if we want, or just expand the size over here. Let's go ahead and just hit auto size for true. And it makes our life a little easier, and I'll go ahead and turn it off because I am not going to be changing that text anymore. So we have our checkbox, now command button, all right, CMD. And you are cancel with a caption of cancel. So most of building a user form is tedious. And CMD submit. But remember, if something is tedious, at least that means that you know what you are doing. And we now pretty much have the completed form with everything renamed. The one thing that you can also do that you saw in the form that I showed you at the beginning is to add some labels. So click the A here, and you can add a label up here for the title, and then a label here for the attitude, and a label for the list toy. I'm not going to be adding the labels here. It's going to take too much time, and I'm not going to be dealing with them programmatically, and we did it in the last tutorial anyway. So let's just get this guy out of here and go to getting values from this into the worksheet. Let's start with the easy one first, the cancel button click. Do you remember how to do that one? Unload me. Very easy. And let's go with the submit button click. I'm just going to click this guy and then click submit. A little bit faster than the drop-down menus up here. And I'm going to show you a, let's say, medium advanced way to get the values into the next available row for your data set. There are many more advanced ways that I cover in the full course, but let's go with saving the input range into a variable and then just offsetting the input from that. That may sound confusing, but it's going to make your life easy. So let's create a variable called input range, and let's make it a range variable so that we can store a reference like A1, A2, A3, and then we'll use that to figure out what goes where. And to put a range into the variable, input range, control space to fill that in, equals, let's say the worksheet where we want it to go, worksheets, sheet 1, the name of the worksheet right there. And let's go for the cells in the worksheet, and let's go to the very end of it. So rows.count is going to give us the number of rows in the worksheet. And which column do we want to work with? Well, the third column. Hit Alt F11. I'm going a little bit quick here, so it's not a long tutorial. In the full course, everything is a little bit more well explained. So we have column A, B, and C, which is the third column, and we're going to use this to figure out which is the next row to input the value into. So that's why that is 3. And what I'm doing here is a standard way to find the next available row. So we're going to use end and then go XL up and then offset by 1. If that looks really confusing for you, just know that it's pretty much a very standard way to get the next available row. It's not anything too crazy. But what's nice about this now is that I can go input range, get the value property of it, and this right here is going to be the next available row and the cell for attitude. So we get the attitude value from the combo box, type CBO and attitude, and get the value from that. There are many ways to get the value from the combo box depending on how you set things up, but this is a nice, simple, easy way to do it. Now let's input the toy color from the list box. And for that, we do need an offset because what we have is a range reference for this guy. And we need to move it 1, 2, 3 columns to the right. So input range dot offset, open parentheses, we don't need a row offset, so comma to go to the column argument, 3 for that, and then reference the value for that cell, and LST toy color dot value to get the value from that. Once again, the very simple way to get a value from the list box. There are many more complex ways the moment you make your user form complex. And that's all covered in the premium course, but this is going to work perfectly for the user form that we have here. Now let's go for the checkbox. Input range, we're going to offset this guy as well. This time it's going to be 4 columns. And the value, now the checkbox, what do we do? Well, let's reference it, CHK agree, but how do we get if it's checked or not? Once again, we go to the value property. Checkbox value property is going to be true or false. And now let's get the values from the option buttons. That's also quite easy. We just reference the option button that we care about, and let's do control space here. We are going to see option button for the cat, the dog, female, and the male. You can see the prefix for the controls comes in really handy there. So let's go for the option for the cat. Now, how do we figure out if it's selected or not? Well, the value property. And that's going to be true or false. So how do we figure out if option cat or option dog has been selected? Well, you have to check each one. And that's where it can get kind of annoying. And that's why in the full course I show you how to loop through option buttons so that you can store their values in one go. But here we're going to do it by hand, one by one. It's not too difficult, just a little if statement. So if option cat.value is true, and we don't have to check true, it's going to return true or false. We can put then. And what we can do now is else if option dog.value is true, then end if. Now what do we want to do? Well, let's input a value somewhere in our input range. And of course we need an offset as well. And this time just 1. So offset 1.value equals, what do we want to store? Well, we could hard code cat here, and we could hard code dog down here. But if you wanted to give them the visible value, then what you could do is this, option cat dot caption, and the same thing for the dog, option dog dot caption. So we have lots of options, but at this point we are actually done, and let's go ahead and put an unload me down here to close the form after we input the values that we want. And hit play to test this guy out. Let's go for a cool, how about a dog this time, male, get a black toy, and agree that you love animals. Hit submit. And let's go back to the worksheet. If you run it from the worksheet, you're not going to have to worry about that. And there we go. Cool dog, black, true. Now we didn't input the value for sex, but you're going to do that exactly the same way that we did for cat and dog. Nothing changes at all. You reference the option button control, see if it's selected, and store a value in the worksheet. Now, before I go, I do want to go back to the VBA window and show you the difference, or kind of explain where some of the differences are between what I'm giving you here and what's in the premium course. Because this right here, all it does is get input from the form and store it in the worksheet. In the premium course, I show you more about input validation. And what I show you there is a system for validating input, a system for checking things within your code, checking conditions. Has this condition been met? Has this condition been met? I show you a system for implementing those types of checks here so that you can make robust, easy to manage, and most important, easy to update in the future input validation checks for your code. Coding can be confusing, and in the full course, I show you ways to make it less confusing and more powerful. So definitely check the link in the description of this video if you're interested in taking that full course. And if you're seeing this video right after it's published, the course isn't up yet, but it will be very, very soon, I promise.